Okay, I thought I'd go ahead and get that one started there. So this is the webinar for the global reporting module of Maestro. I'm just going to go ahead and start by sharing my screen. Starting up here, we've got the normal homepage for the Maestro site. So to get into our global reporting section, it's down here. It's kind of like a printer. Then we open up our global reporting, and that brings us through to our global reporting area. So in the global reporting area, there's a couple of things that I want to go through here. So we've got my reports and favorites and the available reports. So if you want some reports to be quick at hand, you can always click on the star and that will add them to your favorites. And if you want to open up a report for editing or viewing, it's at the magnifying glass over here on the left or the pencil over here on the right. It's also where you'll be able to delete a report. Additionally, if you don't have the ability to delete, that's suggested it is a custom report made by our database team there. By opening up here with the magnifying glass, it will bring you through to the report. It'll automatically try to run the report by going immediately to the report viewer and running it. Unless you have filters on, then it won't run immediately. This is where you'll go to run the report. So hitting on that magnifying glass and going through to report viewer, it's where you'll run your report once they're created. But a majority of this webinar is going to be taken up by how we create the reports. So we want to create a new report. Also, if we wanted to edit a report, it's sort of the same sort of screens. But if we want to make up our new report, we go up here and click New Report, and that will open up our screen for editing. Now, the first page here, it's quite an important page because this sets us up for what we can see in the report, particularly with the module and area. So this chooses sort of the SQL query that we send through to the database, which determines what fields come up in the next part. So it is quite important to know what sort of you're going through here. So if I wanted to say go to flight records, it'll automatically fill in an area because the area is dependent on the module, and we can select from here what kind of information we want from the flight records. These will be completely different depending on which module you choose. So if we go to safety reporting, it has different area options completely, including looking at the actions and discretion reports, or just the fields of our safety reports that we've created in the past there. I'm just going to click on flight records and give us our flights and custom fields or legging custom fields. It's probably the most common one I see for a flight record report, so we're going to go with that one. Just as important, we're going to give this one a name. We don't have to give it a report description, but that's always useful if you need to just put a description on your report, see if you're going to be using it by other people, that might be handy there. And down here is the view report access area. So this is the area where we can give people specific access to the report. And like most access areas in Maestro, we can do this by whole base or whole department, single user. When we give them that permissions there, they'll be able to see and use the report. Once we're happy with our selections on this page, we can hit next. An important thing about the next button here, whenever you hit next, it saves what was on the page. So if you change any details within the columns or layout or filters, it'll only change if you hit the next button here. It saves what's on that page. I'm just going to jump back to the previous page just to show what's happened here. So these two fields have been completely grayed out and can't be changed. The main reason for that is because now that those two have been selected, that's what gives us these available fields. The issue being that if we started creating the report with these fields and we suddenly decided we wanted to change, it will completely remove all of the other information from the report. So we lock those down at the beginning there. If you did want to change them, unfortunately, the only real way to do that one is to create a new report with different fields. And you might have to delete this one to get its name back if you want to keep the name. That would be the only way to change those ones, is to create a new report. But don't be scared of that one, because the best way to figure out which area you need is to actually put in the areas and see what information you have here. So available fields are all of the fields that we can have in our report. A lot of useful ones here for flight records, like the flight date. We'll put that one in there. And what I'm doing here is I'm just selecting the field I want and then hitting the arrows to take it through. If I don't want flight ID, I can use the left arrow to put it back. If I want like the plane rego, I can do that while pushing it through here. Onto these ones here that have CFF and CFL. What the CFF and CFL prefix is custom field flight and custom field leg. So anything with CFF or CFL on it is a custom field that you've added to your own flight records there. So it looks like in this review site, we've got age and customer and date of birth and things like that as custom fields that we've put into our flight records. So yeah, custom fields might not always be the same between sites, but these ones will be. The ones without them ones will be the same between sites. Just going to put in a couple more fields just so we can see some information when we go to the end there as well. Now that I've selected these fields are going to come up in our report when we run it. What I'm going to do here is I'm also going to go through grouping. Now, what grouping essentially does is it takes one of the fields that we designate and groups like things together. So just from what I can see here, it might be a good idea to group these by, let's say, rego. So what I've made here is the rego group. So now when we go ahead and run this report later, when we get to report viewer, it will now take all of the entries in the flight records that have the same rego, and we'll put them together. Now that I'm happy with what I've put in for our selected fields, I'm going to hit next, and that will save the details there. Just going to hit back so we can talk a bit more about this one. So mainly, what do we do if we have come through to this report and we can see that they're in our available fields, we don't quite have the fields that we want? There are two real ways we can do this one. One, it might be a field that isn't in the flight records. Say you want something from the personnel details, something specifically from there, like you want a passport number, if you record passport number in your personnel details in this report as well. Or unfortunately, that would need a custom query, and we're more than happy to do that here on our database side. But because that's custom, you'll need to send through an email just with the details of what you want in the report. So if you don't see the available field here, and it's in another area of our Maestro, or like recencies or safety reports, or somewhat other than what you've selected for the flight report, we'll need to create like a custom sort of query to get that information there. Another reason that it might not be appearing here, if it's a custom field, the report may have been created before that custom field was created. So unfortunately, if I create this report and then I add a new field to the flight records, it won't show up in available fields because the report won't recognize the new custom field. And the ways around that is either creating a new report, or copying the report will also work, I believe. Or you can ask us to go to the database team and have it added into the available fields for the report. But more often than not, it'll be trying to figure out which area, which module of Maestro has all of the fields you'll need. And if they're completely different areas, we can create that for you. Going through to the next step here, this is the report layout stage. So this is where we start to add a few different things. We can see the layout here. Now, I've got the group header here. What I can do here, because I've put that group, the Rego group, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in the label. So we're going to have a group label of simple. What this basically does is it actually, for that group, which we've designated to be grouped by Rego, it will now print the aircraft registration there as the group header. This is quite useful in a lot of different areas, especially if you want to group by, say, the pilot in command. You can put their name there so you can see their name and what details they have underneath it. Group and report footer have different selections here. So what I can do is I can calculate, I can count rows. And what that will give me, because it's in the group footer, how many rows there are in that group. Report footer has the same sort of abilities, but that will be for the whole report rather than just the groups. So doing a row count on the whole report in its footer will give you an idea of how many complete items are in the report. For other fields that have a number category, we can also do calculate, and we can do total or average or minimum maximum. Total will be adding them all together. Minimum will display the lowest, maximum the highest. So put that together there with a total command hours there, and that should give us the addition of all of the ones in that group. Once I'm happy with my layout, hitting next to save. Another important area here is the filters. So if you don't have any filters and I want to run this report, it will try to get all of the data on the site, and this can slow the site down considerably. So what we generally advise doing, particularly if you're just trying to figure out what you want in your report, a good idea to have in your report is the flight date. So this will be filtering on a date. Now, a lot of people ask, how do we create a date range with these filters if we can only really select one at a time? So how we create a date range is exactly like this. We put a before or on flight date. We can go down to our flight date again. After or on. Now we can put in a date. Well, this is the default date. Now get back to default dates, but we'll just put in this date. And now this filter is looking for anything that's before the 12th. We'll put on this one. So now the report is looking for things that were after the 10th or on or before the 12th. So that gives us our date range there. So we can do date ranges. We just need the two date filters to do it. I might just quickly change these up here, because we can always change these by hitting updates. We've made our changes. Just to make that a little bit more readable, because after should become before and before last. So that gives us the closing of our range. We can also go through other filters through here. Pretty much anything that we had in the report columns and the available fields, we can use as a filter here. One of the more useful items here is using IDs. So command pilot ID. So if we put command pilot ID as just an available field, and not many people use a command pilot ID or anything like that one, because it just gives them a flat number of what corresponds to that user in the system. It won't tell you exactly who that pilot is, but it'll tell you it's pilot ID 14 in the report. So Not many people use IDs when they go through to the full report as an available field. But what IDs are actually most useful for is in a filter, they'll actually resolve to the person's name. So now we can put on a command ID and we can add that in. And now we'll have a drop down to select who we want to filter by part in command. Once we're happy with our filters being added there, we can hit next to save the filters. And it brings us on to the next section, which is report scheduling. So there's two things you can do in the report schedule. One is create an API key. This is most primarily used for things like Power BI, which are making calls from Maestro for information. We can do this by creating a plus API key, and that gives us just our key down here. But we can copy the API key and the URL and use that to set up Power BI to make calls to Maestro using this API here. We can just hit copy and it will copy it to our clipboard. You can also make edits or delete it if we no longer need it. That's more or less how to generate the API key. And then you can use that for your Power BI or other programs that use that sort of call functionality. The other thing you can do in here is enable schedule. So when I tick this box, a bunch of new fields start opening up for when we start doing our scheduling. The first one here, you'll see it's gone red because we must provide at least one valid email address. It's the email address. So this is where we put in who the report gets sent to. It gets sent as an email. And we also choose our format here. Whether we wanted a CSV, Excel, PDF, Word. We can change what format it gets sent through to the email address. You can put multiple email addresses separated as a semicolon, so a lot of people just put the names in here or shared mailboxes as well to receive it. Now we get on to the date parameter replacement. So this is, because we have date filters, that's why this is appearing here. It allows us to set up our dates filters for those future reports that are going to be scheduled. Currently, they're set on no replacement, so they'll use whatever we set as default. And we'll talk about default in a second, but I'll just go through these date filters first, and then we'll talk about defaults and why we use those. So let's say we wanted to make a report that's sent every week on the first day of the week for the previous month. Because we need the previous month, we'll hit on current day and current day. Just with these two selected, what that'll do is that'll change those date filters before or after on to be whatever day the report is being sent on. Not useful for what we just said we were going to do, but what we can do here is we can set in our offset. -1 day. -1 day. So what this will do is this is now setting it to the current day. Today will be the 27th, and it's taking away 1 day. So this will actually set the flight date or after on field to be the 26th with how I've set it up here. And if I set it to -1 months, it will now go back to the 27th of last month. And we'll put no replacement on here because we don't need it to go into the future because we won't have those records just yet. So now at the moment when this schedule runs, it will run for the previous month up to the current day and give us the information for that. We also said, I also said weekly, but let's go monthly. We also said down here that this is how often we want it to run. So if we set to monthly, to run on the day 1 of every 1 month is the default. We can also set it to the first day of every 1 month or the last day of the month or the first weekday or Sunday of every month. We also make it run every 2 months if we really wanted to. But if we wanted to run for the first day of every month, we can just select this one here, and that allows us to choose it there. So now with these settings here, it will push the date filter back a month and will run every month on the first day of the month, sending it out to whatever email address we put it through. And that's how you'll be able to set up the report with that one. You can set it to daily, weekly, or yearly. Those ones just change through there. That's more or less how you can set up the schedule for this one here using these filter dates. Now, with the default in the filters, which I say we were going to go through, with the no replacements, if I just step, I have to step this. If we just step back to the report filters, this is where we actually set defaults. So if we said no replacement on those dates, it wouldn't enter dates because the default is no date here. To set the defaults, it's more or less just choosing these ones here and then hitting updates. And now they have default dates in. So if you use no replacement on the scheduler, it'll just go straight through to those dates and not replace them. Not as useful as defaults for the other ones. So when we run a scheduled report, any other filters it has will always run with whatever the defaults are. So that filter that schedule that we set up there will run using that monthly filters that we set up, but it will run with that command pilot set to its default, which is nothing. If I wanted to always have one of the filters set to defaults, I'll have to set it here and hit update and hit next to save my change. Now the filter has changed to having that as the default. So now whenever the schedule report is run for this report, it will use this default rather than having no filter there. Just going back to the schedule. The last two sections of the scheduling of the report are when it wants to end. Most commonly I see no end date there, but you can also just change it to end by and then put in a date, and it will end when it ticks over to 0000 on that date, and it will stop sending there. The last part is the report schedule history. Now, every time the report schedule goes out for every week, month, year, or day that you set it to go through, it actually records in the history whether it was a successful send or not. So if you don't receive the report for any reason, you can go through to this section of the report, take a look at the history and see if it says it's sent okay. Then you might be looking into if there was like sent to your junk mail or blocked by sort of a webmail thing. If it says it's failed here, then it's from our side and we'll need to take a look at our mail server. But this report schedule is where it shows where it's sent correctly. Once we're happy with our details here, we can hit next to save all of those ones. I haven't put an email address in, so I won't be able to save it. So I'm just going to disable it. So actually, I'll just hit next so you can see the error. It's not letting me go through because we haven't put an email address in. I'm just going to go ahead and untick that one so we can hit next and go through to the next part. So now it's filled with that R. Anderson because we set that as the default. So I'm just going to remove that there. And with these ones here, because they're just set as filters, once you get to the report viewer, you can change the values in here if you need to. Because this is a review site, I'm not sure what kind of information we're going to get. So I'm just going to give it a wide sort of date filter there to see what we can get when we hit browser. Now I hit browser there because that's what I use normally when I'm working on a global report for someone. I use browser just to give myself a preview. So when you hit browser, it will always open up in this preview area down the bottom. You can also run it as PDF, CSV, any of these other ones will create a file on your computer. but browser will just make it show in the bottom area there. So now we can see all of the information that we asked for, our flight date, our rego, command hours, command pilot ID, and the route. We can see that some of these weren't entered. So I just break down what we're looking at here. This, it's probably easier if I just ignore that one and tell you how it is on a much better looking one. So this bold here, that's our group. Remember before when we put together a group and we said we wanted to group it by the aircraft rego? So that's exactly what it's doing here. And we set it in our layout to have that heading. So now it's put the heading of the group that we wanted, that rego, and it's grouped anything that uses the same rego to that group. We also have our row count here. So in a real sort of a situation, we can go, oh, okay, so this aircraft had 3 flights in that time period that we said, just by looking at our row count down here. And with our totals, we can say, oh, so the command hours that were performed on this rego type, there was only 1 done with this aircraft, but down here there was 16. We jump to the back part of our report. We can also see that in total, in that time that I put into the details for the whole report, we can see there were 37 rows, so there were 37 entries into the flight records during that time. Okay. So that's more or less what we're looking for in when we make our global reports. If we don't have the area types or columns that you're looking for, and if you want to get them from other areas, that would definitely need to be a custom report. So you would need to send through an email to us to get that created. But there are a lot of different things you can do with the global reporting. Just getting through, sort of getting with the safety reports. And we can get our different kinds of reports there. I'll just go through and ask if there are any questions. So just while we're seeing if anyone's got any further questions or anything like that, I'll go through another safety report that we're looking into. So up here, the details look here. So for safety reports, which are another kind of really common report that we get through, we can see that one of the areas that we can use is the safety report types. So these would mirror exactly what's come from your safety report setup. So these are the report types that would be there. And when we select a report type, the flight reports or the whistleblower reports, let's go ahead and just pick one. So that might have ground report. We'll go ground reports because that might have some actual entries in the system. Giving it our title because it always needs a title. So looking at a different type of report here, this is the safety reports as opposed to the flight reports. We can see that it's set up a slightly different way because we've got these CF tab A. Now, CF, if you remember from when we did the flight records, CF means a custom field. So something you've entered as a custom field on a safety report. Safety reports are always going to have a lot more custom fields than flight reports because they're mostly made up of custom fields. But we do have similar things like base name, obviously risks and things like that. And title, obviously every safety report will have a title, so that's there, but generally the meat of what you'll see. So the main difference with the safety reports and the flight records sort of reports there is this tab A, tab B. So this is a custom field on different tabs in sort of the safety report. So safety reports can have multiple tabs. This is where you're identifying where the information you want in the report is. So Here it's the first tab, it's going to be tab A, second tab, tab B. That's what that tab refers to there, which tab in the safety report type we're looking at. I'm going to take it through the whole report then. So in this one, we want to have our base names here because I want to know which bases are putting in reports. To know what type of event it is, which department it is. And we'll go reported by as well. Want to know how many bases are, which bases are doing the most reports? We can go ahead and we can group these by base name. So this one now, for all the reports that have the same base name, it'll group them together. And of course, now in our layout, we want to make sure that we know what group we're looking at, because if I don't put that there, it'll just be blank. I won't know basically what group I'm looking at. So I want to know how many go through the counter. Okay, just like before, we want to set our group names to show what it is and get our counts. Just want to know how many are there. And we'll hit next this time so it actually saves what we put in. Our report filters, the first thing I look for is a date field. So we've got our event date here. We can put in our befores and afters to give us that day range, so we're not trying to pull the whole thing. We actually have a couple of date fields on here because we've got report date will be when it's submitted, and event date is, it's a different field inside most safety reports where you can actually say we're submitting this report on this date, but the event was in the past. So that can also be useful as well. Got our range there. Just a quick run through the schedule because we're not going to need this to be a scheduled report. Let's say I wanted it to run. Let's do weekly. So let's put it on the Monday every week. And for our date fields, we want it to run for 7 days ago. So that will replace our after date with whatever the date was 7 days ago. And this before will just be the current date because we don't need anything from the future because it hasn't been entered yet. And now we have our weekly report that runs on Monday and keeps running. That's if we were going to keep it because I don't want to put an email in. I'm just going to hit that again to turn it off. Hitting next to apply and save any changes gives us our ground report here. Just like before, we can set our date for running. Browser. And we see that in that since 2022, there's only been 3 reports submitted in this test site here. And they're all for Adelaide because most of our testers that will be testing things are in Adelaide, so we would just normally use our base name there. But if we had more, you'd be able to see the row count, so we can see that Adelaide has 3 reports via our row count. Okay. Well, thank you for joining me for the webinar. Hopefully you got quite a bit out of that one. If you have any questions, I'll keep the chat open a bit longer there, but in the future, if you have any questions, you can also send them through to our help desk. We'll be more than happy to answer those through, as we're always happy to help out there with the global reporting module. And definitely, if you have any custom queries that you need us to create where you're combining from different modules, that'll also be the place to send those requests through as well.